What's up, everybody? Hello and happy Talk It Up Tuesday. This is Michael Demond here on behalf of Be Well Magazine, coming to you live from our virtual studio. Here to have a conversation on Talk It Up Tuesday with Imani Ray. Imani, how you doing?
What's up? What's up? I'm feeling great. I'm excited about this topic. I'm usually tired around this time on Talk It Up Tuesday, but I got energy. I've been going crazy with my steps today. Had a little extra coffee than normal, so I got some energy. I'm ready.
Awesome, awesome. So let us know that you are out there and ready to join us for this conversation. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about operating out of survival mode, the pros and the cons, which are there any of each? We're also going to just talk a little bit about our own personal experience as entrepreneurs as it relates to pricing products and services. And we want to get some feedback from you out there in the audience if you've had any challenges related to how cheap you are, how expensive you are, what kind of feedback people give you around pricing. This conversation was sparked by a post that Amani posted this morning where she asked, did you price your product and service based on what it's worth or what you think people can afford? And that led to a lot of conversation in the comments that we want to bring that conversation here to our live stream today. So let me just first ask you, Amani, like what sparked you to ask that question?
Great question. So I'm obsessed with Full Transparency podcast right now by Donnie Wiggins. She is one of the co-hosts of Social Proof podcast, and she's branched off and started her own in addition to Social Proof. And this morning I was listening. I've been listening to the podcast all day, just getting as many nuggets as I can. And she asked that question, and I was like, "That's good." And she also followed that up with saying, "What people can afford is none of your business." And I was like, that's not, I'm not in the business of aligning my prices based on what people can afford. And that really resonated with me, and it made me think about how I want to moving forward. Like, I absolutely have to stop discounting everything and adjusting everything and putting things out for free solely based on trying to accommodate what people can afford, and make sure I just adjust my marketing to the people who fit within that tax bracket, or fit within that that range of people who can afford my services. And I am a firm believer in having options, having some free things available, having some free content and things like that accessible for people who may need that. But I definitely want to get out of the habit of adjusting prices based on other people, and get into the habit of pricing things based on the value of what it is that I offer. And last thing I'm gonna say on this part is, a lot of times we hear the terminology of creating prices based on our value as humans, as who we are and where we think our value lies. But it's really about having the value, or putting the value in your service. Like, what value does my service have, or my product have, for other people, and price it based on that. And sometimes we get confused and caught up in pricing things based on who we are and not what we sell or what we offer. So I want people to take that lesson from this as well. What is the value of what you offer to people?
Mhm. Good points, good points. And I'm glad that we're having this conversation because lately I've done a lot of reflecting on my own journey from when I first started to where I am now. A couple of things that I heard from what you said was that pricing thing based on the value they offer. And when you hear that, there's a lot of things that come into play. Many times, people haven't stopped to consider the value of what they offer for the customer. So it's like, why is this person coming to me to buy this thing? And how is this thing that they're buying from me going to add value or change something in that person's life? I speak from a person who, when I first started out, I think you just can't help but do it if you are operating from just your own personal experience. I had started out thinking about people like myself. Oftentimes, when we start businesses, we think about what would I want, or what would I do, or what would be affordable to me. And
Right.
I know when I first started out, the whole reason my business started in the first place was because I couldn't afford to hire somebody to build a website for me. And that took me down a journey of learning how to create one. And, from there, it's just kind of snowballed into what it is today. But that's what sparked it. Most of the quotes that I was getting about $10,000. And I'm like, well, what is somebody who's just starting out supposed to do? So I kind of came in with that mindset and started there. and had no clue, didn't do no market research, wasn't considering like the impact on what the service I was providing to people was going to do for them. So I wasn't thinking about how is this product or this service going to save them time, what is it going to help them do, and how important is that going to be to them that they're willing to spend their money in order to fix whatever the problem is that they have. I didn't have that level of understanding at that time when I first started.
Yeah, I think a solution for that thinking, because a lot of us start with that thinking, a solution for that way of thinking is being able to say, I had to go through this to get to where I am today. I didn't have the money to pay for someone to build my website, so I figured it out on my own. So creating products that create a do-it-yourself experience for the person versus doing it for them at a low rate, and then now your time is taken up and your availability to be able to show up the way you want as a creative, as an entrepreneur is you know compromised because we're making adjustments for other people. And if you think about it, like a lot of times as like servant minded people, we're like, okay, I had to struggle through this, I don't want somebody else to struggle, let me just do it for them. But um we suffer when we do that. And and I didn't learn this until I'm listening to you talk about it right now, and I'm thinking about it like a better way to manage those situations is to create a do it yourself experience, and then also have an experience to where you do it for people, but for the people who can afford to pay that price, because it's an expensive service. And working with you, I think, gave me a leg up in this industry because you showed me the clear prices early on. Like you showed me $300 logos, you showed me $1,000 logos. You know what I'm saying? And when I hear people complaining on Facebook, like, who can give me a quick logo, quick turnaround tomorrow, a
Don't
quality
tag me in those.
quality people. And I used to tag people all the time in those, and now I'm like, nah, like this, like being a part of the industry a little bit longer now, I'm like, okay, a lot more work goes into this than people realize, and this is a valuable service. And it's just not, people on the outside who need the service versus the people providing the service have two totally different perspectives and mindsets on what they're putting out there. So yeah, I love what you said, because I think there is room to provide support for people who were in positions we used to be in. But something I wrote down as you were talking is our value raises based on where we are in our life. So as we grow, our companies, what we offer, all of that needs to scale up the way we are leveling up, and I failed to recognize that as an asset or a benefit or a positive thing. My business kept, sometimes we outgrow our business is basically what I'm trying to say. And you either have a choice to level up, as like level your business up while you level up, or you can stay stagnant and you just stay stuck. And for years I kept shutting my business down because I didn't know how to create opportunities for the business to grow with me. And sorry, I'm super passionate about this topic, so I know I'm going past the started, but I listened to a Social Proof podcast episode yesterday with Pinky from Slutty Vegan, and she talked about the way we outgrow our businesses, and a lot of us will never reach that space of being and building an empire because we think, oh, I got to figure this out on my own, I got to do this on my own. Hiring a team, absolutely not. Nobody's gonna love my business the way I do. And I'm talking about me. Like, I have yet to hire a team, and I've been in business since 2014. That's a problem. You know what I'm saying? And so now I'm seeing what it looks like to do those things, hire a team, and I'm able to hear these gems from people that's been in the game for a while and they're doing it right. And now I'm just like, okay, I have to pivot and I have to make some better choices in terms of growth. Now, if you want to be a small business for the rest of your life and you want to function that way, this ain't the conversation for you. But if you see bigger for yourself and you're trying to build an empire and go to the next level, it's going to take some other hands in the pot to build it.
Yeah, it took me a very, very long time to get to the point now where I can understand that, because you're talking about realizing that how many years after 2014? What's this? 9 years later?
Mm-hmm.
Try like me doing stuff for 20 years and just having the realization 2 years ago that, oh yeah, wait a minute, I don't have to keep on operating like this. And fear, I believe, is the root of that. I can
Mhm.
tell you exactly the things that I was trying to avoid. One, I didn't want to be responsible for other people's financial livelihood, because
Mhm.
that's a lot of responsibility when things don't go right. It's one thing to take the risk for myself, and I was comfortable taking the risk for myself. But when you position yourself in a way where you're now taking on financial risk that's going to impact other people, that's a frightening thing to think about. The other thing is too, when I started, is like I just started my business more as just a self-employed person.
Mhm.
So I didn't think about the structure of a business and what that requires, and staffing, payroll, the systems that have to go behind that. Like, so those are intimidating things that kind of keep people from thinking too big. You know,
Mhm.
what do I need to make to pay my bills is where I spent a lot of my time. Um,
Yes.
the interesting thing about that, though, as long as I had that mindset about what do I need to pay my bills, that's
Mhm.
all I made.
Yep.
All I made is the level that I set as the limit. Like,
Woo!
okay, I need $2,000. Guess what? I made $2,000. It
Wow.
took years for me to realize, like, well, what would happen if I just increase that number that I believe I need to make and really believe it? And the more I did that, the more the increase was in the revenue.
Mhm.
So that was an eye-opening thing for me to think like, okay, I can decide, the power of choice. You know, we always
Mhm.
talk about the power of choosing. Like, I can choose that, because when I look back into history, I saw that I was able to rise to that level every time. The
Mhm.
new thing for me is really operating in this space as somebody who's in a business from the perspective of having to be a CEO. I've never had to think like that. I never had to take in consideration the things that a CEO has to take in consideration. So like
Mhm.
this whole year for me is learning, is hands-on learning, and monitoring, and diving into that and not being afraid of it, because for a long time I just really avoided having that responsibility. So I'm willing to go that journey, but I will say too, because I raised that level of thinking and looking at the business from the position of a CEO rather than the person who's working in the business, who's working on task, my whole value landscape has changed big time.
Mhm.
So, when I'm now thinking about goals, I'm not thinking about, how do we make $2,000 a month? I'm now thinking about how do we make $2,000 a day? What kind of systems do we need to have in place to make $250,000 a month? It's a whole different way of thinking that then requires you to retool everything that you're doing and value things a lot differently too. So I'm gonna pause there for a minute, because there's some more stuff that I know I can go into around this, and want to kind of just get your thoughts and your feedback on what I said so far.
And even on the last point you just made, our mindset, even the a mindset shift for what you just said, and less about how can I make this much money or how can I get them to buy this service, and what problem can I help them solve that's valuable enough for them to pay this amount of money. Is the I literally just learned that nugget today about reframing our mindset and our language and our thinking,
Yeah.
because I had no idea how much mindset plays a role in our overall success. Like I knew it, but I didn't know it. And like as I'm listening to you right now, I just read this this little literally just read the six basic fears in the book I'm reading right now are the fear of poverty, the fear of criticism, the fear of ill health, the fear of loss of love of someone, the fear of old age, and the fear of death. And poverty is the number one fear on that list.
Yeah.
And
That's
how,
one on my list.
man, our we I feel like us having a mindset of fear around poverty creates the poverty. Like
Mhm.
that survival mode that we're talking about in this episode, the fact that we even have poverty as an option in our head that it could happen is what creates the reality of it happening. If
I
we
see.
tell ourselves in our mind every day that poverty is not an option, and we know what it looked like, and that's our never again, like Donald Bradley talked about on Social Proof episode, our never again moment. If we've been there before and we didn't like the way that felt, we have the power to adjust not only our thinking but our actions to prevent that from ever happening again.
Mm.
And so me, I'm telling myself every day, and now that we're talking and saying out loud, like even this week, I set a financial goal. But what if we shift our financial goals into setting value goals? this is the amount of value I'm providing this week. And I know that this value is worth this amount of money, and attach that value to the monetary gain that's going to happen as a result of it. But we allow that value that we're offering to drive us throughout the week. And I really wonder if we just make that little shift, what's on the other side of that, as far as getting to the end of the week and being like, wow, I really surpassed that goal. Because the focus was on the value that I'm providing, the help that I'm providing people, the results that I'm helping people get. If that was like our motive, and I think when we're in survival mode, it's almost, it feels impossible to think with that mind frame, because we know what we have to offer is value. That's why we're offering it.
Right.
It has value. That's why we're offering it. But to shift our mind from thinking about here's what I'm providing to support people versus here's what I'm providing to gain this amount of money, that mindset shift seems impossible. It seems impossible when you're in survival mode.
Yeah.
But as we're having this conversation, I'm getting the feeling that survival mode is a choice. Like,
Dang. Okay.
that to have that mindset of lack, and we come from Milwaukee, so that's a whole nother topic we can talk about, is how Milwaukee kind of builds you have it. I feel like coming from Milwaukee gives you a built-in survival mode complex or something, if that's even like, it gives you that. And when you expose yourself to different environments and opportunities and experiences, you get to unlock what it looks like to not be in constant survival mode. And Arizona has done that for me, for sure. I think there's craziness and negative mindsets and all of that exists everywhere, no matter where you are. But if you allow your environment, just like we allow our negative environments to have an impact on us, we have to start allowing those positive environments and opportunities that we get a chance to experience impact us in a positive way. Just went on another huge tangent, but my overall point in that was just those little mindset shifts that we can make and focus our energy and time on. A lot, obviously, we want to get to a certain financial goal and we want to reach a certain financial threshold, but I just really believe, after the things I've been listening to, that it can make a world of difference to invest our energy into the impact we're making versus the money we're making.
Okay. You said a lot of stuff that I have to kind of go back in my mind and talk about. So for anybody who's just tuning in, we're having a conversation today about value. We're talking about operating with a scarcity mindset, operating from the position of trying to survive, doing things to try to survive, talking about pricing your products and your service and your business. All these things are connected and related in one way or another. But at the root of them comes all back to mindset. Really, what you believe is really playing a role in this. So we talked earlier, Amani had a post asking people, did you price your products and your service based on what it's worth, or did you take in consideration what you think people can afford? So just talking about our own personal journeys with that, I definitely had a very long journey with that. And Amani, you said something that really made me think, like, my number one motivator. So now you got me just rethinking my whole life, because my number one motivator is I don't ever want to be put in the position of living in poverty again. So like that's what started me in the first place, with everything. Like once I got exposed, that's something else you said. Once you see something differently, like you talked about seeing Arizona and how life is. I can remember I'm in high school meeting people who lived out in the suburbs and seeing how they lived. I remember being in a house that had multiple bathrooms. I remember them saying, we're going to meet up in the family room. I'm like, you mean like the living room? No, it's a whole separate kind of room. So like, I just remember having all these things that I'm like, this is a level that I never even knew or thought about. And this is so normal for some people. So that really became a thing for me. And now that I think about it, like, yeah, I've been carrying that seed with everything that I've been doing about that never again moment, never wanting to be in that position. I feel like it's helped me in some way, but now it has me thinking about, like, has it held me back in some ways too? Because if I'm a believer of what you think you manifest, this is the same thing. If I believe that that's an option, then guess what? It's on the table as an option of something that can be done.
Any energy you give it, Like any energy you give it. And I used to think manifesting and thinking, our way to success and all that stuff. Like I really thought that it was just The Secret. I grew up hearing my mom listen to The Secret, all of that stuff. Like it just was a passing thought. I heard about it, but I didn't really know where that would take me, really sitting down to understand what those things meant. And now I'm like, just as much as we can think our way into more poverty or think our way into a bad situation and think of the worst case scenario that can happen in the situation,
That's how I did everything.
think about if we did it on the flip side and said, I'm like literally for the past 2 months, I've been going outside on a daily abundance walk, and I'm like, I have everything I need. I live an abundant life.
Hmm.
And I'm about to get real transparent. I've been saying that every day. And there have been things that have gone wrong in the past 2 months. But I kept saying, regardless of my car having to be in the shop costing way more than I anticipated it costing, all the different things that have come my way that could have easily broken me down, every day, I have everything I need. I live an abundant life. Every single day, I have everything I need. I live an abundant life. It don't have no choice to become my reality eventually, especially if I'm not only saying that, but I'm doing the things that are required. That's another thing. Donnie
Yeah.
Wiggins did her podcast today, and she went live. And on her live today, the message was telling us to focus on doing what's required. So instead of setting expectations and standards for ourselves based on other people and how hard they work, it's like, what is your perspective on you, like being amazing or great at something? Like what's your overachiever mode? What's your standard of going above and beyond and doing what's needed? Like set a standard based on what's required of you on your journey. And so obviously there's work that has to happen. You can't just be saying I live an abundant life and sit on the couch all day and expect the abundance to arrive.
Right.
But if we really mix our mindset, a positive mindset, and our actions together, I really just don't see room for failure. I think there's room for lessons, because no matter what, we're all going to have some sort of obstacle that deviates, like makes us deviate off of our path to success. But I posted about this today too, shifting our perspective on a great life. Like we think because we have obstacles that come our way, a bad day or a bad moment turns into a bad day, a bad day turns into a bad life. And
Right.
it's so easy to get caught up in that woe is me mentality, when you could really have a shift and say, okay, I had a bad moment. What can I do in this next hour to create a better moment that can then create a better day, that can then create a better life? And if
Mhm.
we take that level of control over our life and just even take the word poverty out of our vocabulary, no matter what life may look like at this very moment, man, man,
Yeah.
man, you got me hyped, Mike. You got me hyped on this. I have to take some clips from this episode.
Oh yeah.
This is my topic all day, and it's my topic because self-discovery is my like number one passion right now. And
Mhm.
none of these revelations that I'm having, none of these moments of clarity and certainty would be here, and I wouldn't be able to say anything I'm saying right now if I didn't dedicate the last 6 months to my growth and my healing and my understanding of how impactful my negative mindset has had on me. And I'm
Mhm.
like, reading all these books, and I'm thinking like, when I was in Milwaukee, I had really good jobs. Like I don't know how I got them. I don't know what. Like I would just go in and interview. My first big interview was to be a program manager for a day camp program. I was 19. They weren't even hiring. You had to be 21. They weren't even hiring people my age. But one of my mentors at the time suggested that I apply, and I did it, and I got the job. And still in that moment, I was like for some reason, I've always went after the things that felt too big. And
Yeah.
but now I'm going after the things that feel too big with a different level of confidence. And I can't imagine the impact that that's going to have, going into it with confidence versus going into it with I'm just doing this because I think I should. But now I'm going into it because I know I can, and I know I should, and I know I'm going to win, you know. that whole mindset shift and that mentality brings on a whole different level of success. And I'm listening to you and I'm just getting excited because it's one thing to be on this journey on your own, but to have someone else who's striving towards success as well, striving to be great. And, as an entrepreneur, for us to be kind of going this same path of working towards a greater, it makes the journey 10 times more exciting. Because like
Right.
every time, I know we constantly sharing nuggets or books or YouTube videos, podcasts that we're listening to, and that just makes the journey way better. So I'm super grateful about the fact that like we both are experiencing some hurdles and getting through them at the same time.
Yeah, that's the power of being able to collaborate with people and be in a place where you can have that exchange. So many people in their life, they don't have people that they're close to who they can have conversations like this with, that they can share things back and forth related to like their own personal development, their journey. So like, the whole thing of why I started Bond to Build was to create a space for people to grow greater together. Because I see the power of what it's like to bring people together and have them sharing that experience, learn from each other's story, learn from each other's background, hear what others are doing. There's power in that. And the more people that we can get to see that you don't have to be trying to navigate this whole thing by yourself and do everything on your own and try to figure it out on your own. Like we created the space for it. You just got to show up and come in and take advantage of the stuff that's there. So there's some really, really good stuff in the comments that I want to bring up. I could talk about this forever. We might have to go a little longer than 30 minutes.
Let me just touch on Bonneville one quick. I'm not gonna rant. I'm not gonna ramble. But just hearing your clarity during this conversation and knowing how valuable Bond to Build is, I know I see it from the outside looking in. I don't know if you understand how absolutely amazing that space is. I was literally today, I looked at the Better Together sign and I was like, this space is going to transform so many lives. Like the spaces within the space, the overall concept is literally going to shift and change and transform lives. And I'm excited for you to own that. I'm so excited for you to own that as the CEO of
You and
Bond.
Joseph, I keep saying that. I say it's like I don't think you understand. I was like, I think I do, but we'll see.
When you get it, it's over. It's over. The world better watch out. What does Devon D say?
The world is watching. Yeah, yeah. So I want to pull up this comment that Wendy shared. Wendy Campbell here in Arizona with us. She said, Carmen and I were talking about this on Saturday. I tend to ask God for just enough instead of asking for abundance so I can be a blessing to others. Felt. We talked about that earlier, Wendy. I definitely used to live my whole life based on just enough. My thought about it was I'm selfish if in my ask, if God, wait, I am selfish in my ask if God, when I do that, but because I can't read. I am only thinking about making sure I am okay instead of making sure I can make sure that those around me are okay. That is an excellent point, and there's a couple things that I want to touch on there because it's been contradictory to me when I would hear people say the world is abundant, God is here to provide for us to live this abundant life, but then on the other end there was always like, I don't know where it came from, or there's this selfishness if you think greater, like almost kind of like you're being greedy. That's the word I'm looking for.
Mhm.
Sometimes I felt like if I thought too big, then I was being greedy, and that's not the way that we're supposed to be living our lives. Like that's not what God intended for us. And then there was a point in my life where, reading and listen to different people share perspectives, where you realize, even I was looking at the information for Dr. K's retreat. She talked about giving from your spillover. So, even tithing, that's giving a part of what you have. You think about some of the churches and how grand some of them are. You think about how small some of them are. So it always just kind of been one of those things that I felt like people struggled with, because you try to find the line between, being grateful, but then you also don't want to be greedy. And it's this thing between there where you kind of feel selfish and you feel guilty. So I definitely understand that. And we talked earlier about, I used to just only set my goals at what do I need to personally just survive. We talked about operating out of survival mode. Operating out of survival mode really puts you in a position that you end up, I can honestly say the times where I've done that, I created bigger problems than I was trying to avoid. honestly.
Mm.
I can say that because you create these scenarios and things that in the short term are fixing a problem, but then what did you take on in exchange for that? There have been, I ain't gonna say no names, but there have been clients that I've taken on from the position of operating out of survival that I was just like, why? Especially if I had an experience before and I knew it wasn't a good match, did I do that? I had to bump my head a couple times with that. But when you're operating in survival mode, there's things that you do that you may regret, but then you also feel like there's this necessity to it because you do have something immediate and high pressure that you need to work through.
Right.
So that's why I kind of in the title put the pros and cons of it. I feel like there some of the pros that I've gotten out of operating out of survival was that it made me like snap into it, like, look, let's go, let's do this. Like it kind of put me on fire to make make something a priority and really work on it. That's been a benefit to it. But the opposite end of that was that con side where I just took on stuff that I probably shouldn't have taken on
Yeah.
and worked with people that I probably shouldn't have worked with because the vibe wasn't even right.
Yeah.
The way that I work with my clients are so intimate that that's important to me. So
Yeah.
if I invite energies and negative energy into my space when you know good and well it ain't right, like you only asking for trouble. Now, how do you get rid of it? How do you get out of it?
Right.
So it's a crazy thing. It's a crazy thing to do.
That's so good. I've avoided the greed thing for, I'm only 26, and about 10 of those years I've avoided the the idea that me wanting more meant that I was greedy, and that has kept me stagnant. And listening to Lisa Nichols when I was like graduating high school, going into college, made me realize that the best thing we could do for ourselves and for the people around us is elevate and
Mm,
win. You know what I'm saying? Because keeping the mindset of you're going too far, with your success, and you're going to leave people behind, is only
yes.
keep you behind. That's literally going to keep you behind. And I think Milwaukee breeds that mindset. It breeds that mentality of let me just go far enough so that I don't leave my community behind. But Lisa Nichols made it very clear that the best thing she ever did was leave her community so that she could be a better asset to her community once she got to where she was going. And
Mhm.
too often we put our life on the line for other people who probably, it doesn't make sense in my opinion, but it made sense to me for my entire entrepreneur career. Like I continue to only go so far. It was almost intentional because my mindset created the intentionality of only allowing it to go so far. And I didn't even allow myself to have this abundant mindset of what was possible. I just, I would look at my peers and look at who's winning in Milwaukee and be like, okay, that's the standard. The world is as big as Milwaukee. The world has been as big as Milwaukee to me for the past 25 years. This is
Mm.
the first leap I ever made into a new environment and seriously opened myself up to a new environment. And now I can only imagine once I get to where I'm going, the impact I'll be able to have on Milwaukee, an impact that I would not have been able to have if I stayed there forever. And
Right.
I'm not one of those people who say leave Milwaukee is horrible for you. I'm one of those people who say leave your hometown in general for an opportunity to see bigger, to see different, to see the impact that you can make beyond what you've been able to make by staying within that community. And so I resonate with what you're saying on a deep level because I thought that my life started and ended in Milwaukee. And I'm
Mm.
only 26, and to have that stagnant of a mindset at such a young age, I think is ridiculous. And now I'm just like, oh, the world is literally mine. As far as my success goes, I can go anywhere I want to seek and learn new things and to make new impacts all over the world. And I wouldn't have had that mindset if I would have stayed in Milwaukee with the mindset of this is as far as it goes.
Right. Yeah, you that brings back to what you said in the beginning. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying I want that clip.
Oh, that brings it back to what you said in the beginning. What keeps people from operating at a high level like that? The fear of ridicule.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
like, if you're in an environment where, because I can recall having conversations when I was younger, growing up, And this is with people that are friends, you're in school, there's this attitude of like, you talk about things that are greater than what everybody has around you. And then
Mhm.
it becomes, well, who do you think you are? It starts creating like this discomfort between people. Like, who do you think you are that you can do this? And I
Mhm.
had encountered that like a lot of times. So what it makes you do, it makes you end up not share. It makes you internalize a lot of those things because you start to believe like, well, yeah, who am I? You lived here, you coming up from here, you don't have this, you don't have that. That reminds me of something that you said earlier where you talked about you don't know how you got some of the jobs that you had. You didn't have the credentials. But it's like every time that in my life that I can look up from that time I was 19, I always reach for things that I was technically not supposed to have because on paper I don't look the way that you're supposed to look.
Yep.
So, like, but it was just like I'm like I don't understand why. To me, there was no limitation to it. So like one of the best examples, I was working in a job where after I did a year of college and then I went into the workforce and I did all these different jobs, sales jobs, customer service jobs, and there was one job that I wanted that required a degree. But when I read the job description, I'm like, I'm capable of doing this stuff. I don't understand what the big deal is. So I have people telling me like, well, don't apply for it because they're going to ask you for a degree. And I'm
Right.
just like, but I can do the stuff. Like, what's more important, the fact that I can show up and do the stuff, or the fact that I have the degree? So that's where my mind. To me, there was no limitation, and me not having that was not a reason for me not to strive for the things that I want. Um,
Yep.
but what I was able to do because of my sales experience and because of my customer service experience, I was able to show up in that interview and sell myself. And
Mm.
give me opportunity to get into that department that I wasn't supposed to be in, So
Mm.
everything that we talk about, right, goes right back to the belief. What you believe is possible, and that's why it's just so important to keep yourself around the right people. Because
Yep.
man, if you're not around the right people, life becomes real stagnant, very limited, and you're not able to do what you've been put here to do. Like I believe that all of us have seeds of greatness of stuff that we're supposed to do, but there are so many things that we're battling in our life before you can even like put that seed in the place it needs to be. You have to kind of work through all that stuff, and that's that work that you were talking about with the
Mhm.
healing. Your self discovery journey, just like really kind of figuring all that stuff out. Because it's easy to just not do that stuff and just accept things for what they are. That's some hard work that a lot of people just don't want to face, and that's what leads to you pricing stuff in a way that mimics how you feel about yourself. Because I'm telling you, I'm
That's the line
telling you,
right there. If y'all don't get nothing from this episode, that's the line right there.
I'm telling you,
You are pricing things based on what you feel like you deserve.
yep.
Literally. Literally, that's how you are. That's what you're doing. That, but the next episode needs to be what you just said. Is your circle keeping you stagnant? Like,
Hmm.
is yeah, yeah.
Yeah. This is like I said. This is loaded. This is a loaded conversation right here. I mean, I honestly could still go. So let me look at
Man,
some of these
think
comments.
about it. I'm like, I need you to clip that last part that you just said too. That need to be a reel. That last part that you just shared about you applying for that job. You know how many lives that could, really transform them. Hearing that, just hearing what values on the other end of going for it. That may be a job, an opportunity, a modeling gig, an art project, all those things that people say you aren't supposed to be able to do. Go for it, because
Yeah.
the worst thing that can happen is it won't happen, but at least you can say you tried. Because if you don't do it, then on the other end of that is then you're just gonna live with a bunch of what ifs. But
Yeah.
at least you try, and every time you fail, you learn something new, and you get an opportunity to go into every single new opportunity with a fresh perspective of what did I do wrong last time that I could do better this time. And that's with everything in life. That's with
Hmm.
everything in life.
Yeah. It just made me think back to dang, what was that you just said that made me think? Because at the time, oh, okay, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. It's like right there, it's right there. Let me give it a second because I feel like the words are coming out. It was something that you said that I was just like, that right there is so true. Because I was reading Think and Grow Rich at that time when I was trying to go for something that I was technically not supposed to have and ended up getting it. And what I learned from that um, one, you really have to kind of find a way to trust yourself and your instinct and your inner voice, because there's conversations that we have with ourselves that we share with other people, especially people who we probably shouldn't share with, because they're going to take that and they're going to just use it to destroy you. That's something that kind of came to mind from that. You have to be very mindful about who you share some stuff with. The other thing too, when I think about that is that there are a lot of people who want to see you do well, but if they aren't where they need to be in their life, kind of, I don't even think it's intentional. I feel like there are people who could be family, they could be friends, they could be very close to you, who like subconsciously don't want to see you do the things that you talk about doing, and it sounds so crazy to them. And there's just so many times where this is coming to me because you're making me just, like I said earlier, making me just reevaluate all my life experiences from this conversation. I was just thinking about all the times where I could have just stopped and done nothing and let things that other people believe, because that's where their limit was, become my own. And I'm so glad that I didn't do that, because it I can't live with the idea of not attempting to do something and having that regret. To me, that was the number one thing. Like you talked about, like the worst thing that can happen in some of these cases is that you'll say no. But like to me, getting that no was fine compared to me not ever knowing. That was always my thing.
Absolutely. My mom always told me when I was younger, and I never understood it as a kid, but as an adult, I finally grasped what she was saying. She told me that I didn't have to believe everything that people said about me. Like, and
Yeah.
that sounds very like duh, but good or bad, people are gonna have an opinion and a perspective on you, or where you should be, or where you should go or shouldn't go. And the moment you listen to those things and accept them as true is where we go wrong. Because up until the point she told me that, everything somebody said about me, I took heed to and took that feedback as true and as the reality. And that's how I started to experience myself in the eyes of other people, good and bad. And that really got me together when she said that, because I'm like, oh, I get to create my reality of who I am, how I show up, what I do or don't do. You know what I'm saying? And in the moment where she told me, it was some advice or feedback somebody had gave me about myself, and she was like, that is absolutely not true about you at all. And it wasn't even like this super negative thing, it was like some constructive criticism. But in that moment, I realized I had way too much power, and I gave way too much power to what other people said about me.
Mhm.
And I emphasis on good and bad, because sometimes we take on identities that people set up for us that we didn't create for ourselves.
That's true.
Good or bad. Like literally, I saw myself in a whole different light when I was following the lead of other people's perspectives. Man, I could talk about this stuff all day. man, man.
So this is good. Like we started this conversation talking about pricing, and we talked about operating out of survival mode. And there's been a lot of good conversation that comes from this. But I still feel like we're still on track with it, because the root of it is coming back to the belief, what you believe about yourself and what kind of reality you believe is possible for you. Another thing I wanted to share as we were talking about this is, like, I told you how I used to just set my bar at enough to get by. And like whatever I set my bar at, that's exactly what ended up happening.
Mhm.
And what I've learned too is that, as you grow in your business, you did talk about this, as you grow and you shift, like there's going to be times when the customer that you serve ends up shifting too, and your value becomes different. So like I used to make myself available to any and everybody for any and everything, just that if I could do it, then yeah, I was doing it. And it got to this point where you start, and it's interesting because it does have like a pro and a con to it. Doing that gave me more volume, which gave me more work, which put me out in front of more people, which exposed what I'm capable of doing to more people, which then opened up the pool of people who would see me as a solution to a problem they're trying to fix.
Yeah.
What ends up happening, and this was another thing I had to deal with, you ever heard people say stuff like, oh, so you just big time now, like, oh, I'm too small for you, or you don't need my money no more, that kind of thing.
Yep.
Like that goes right back to that whole crab, that mindset again about the crabs in the bucket.
Mm-hmm.
And it don't be that. It's just like, okay, you only have so much time and you only have so much energy. that you can give, and you end up looking at things in a different light. I had to restructure like my business in a way to figure out where's the time going to be best utilized, and how do I value that time to make sure I'm not operating out of lack, like Wendy said, talked earlier, to position myself so that I can help the people who are going to be coming on as team members. Like I really had to have that conversation. And I think the solution for me was to be able to create these two alternatives. Like right now, Bond to Build is the place that I've created to be able to take the things that I know how to do and put them in a place where people who may not be able to afford our service can kind of take that information and do some things on their own. But then on the other side of that, I have clients who they're like, I know good and well I'm not doing that. I don't want to do that. Like, and they're willing to, and that goes back to what Carmen was saying earlier. Like, there are people who will value it if they know the value of it. The hard part to me was learning how to communicate your value, or making it easier for people to understand the value of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Some people just get it. They like, hey, I know if I had to do this, it would probably take me 3 months. But if I come to you, I can probably get this done in 2 weeks. Those people are real clear, and they'll pay for what they need to pay for to get done what they need to get done.
And that's the market we need to be targeting. And I also want to touch on what you just said. Speaking of value, you talked about what you had to go through in order to get the value in the client. And I want anybody who's listening to understand the value of you sharing that nugget, because and I wrote it down while you were talking because I didn't want to forget. What I got out of that statement you just made is that everything happens on purpose in order for us to fulfill our purpose. And like, you had to go through that experience of chasing volume and chasing exposure, because a lot of people want to pay you with exposure. That's a whole nother topic. You have to go through those moments, not only for you to fulfill your purpose here in this life, but also to help other people prevent obstacles, so they don't have to go through the same thing that you did. And sometimes people choose to learn the hard way, but then again, there's people like us who take in as much, information as we can to be able to avoid certain obstacles that other people experience, so that we can get further faster. So I really love that nugget that you shared, and I hope people see the value of what you just shared.
Thank you. Like we said, we can keep y'all all day, but we got work to do.
I am gonna put out to hold Mike and I accountable.
Okay.
Behind the Content podcast.
Yes.
Coming to a streaming platform near you. I'm not gonna drop a date because that's way too. That's gonna overwhelm us. But be on the lookout. Behind the Content podcast. If you like the flow of our conversation and the nuggets that we shared during this episode on Talk It Up Tuesday, we still gonna show up for Talk It Up Tuesday, and you're gonna see more of my mom on these Talk It Up Tuesdays as well. You're gonna see more of her, but for exclusive content and conversations from Mike and I, be on the lookout for Behind the Content podcast.
Yep. Look on for that. And then we also want to let you know too, we talked about Bond to Build a couple of times in this conversation. Bond2build.com. BONDTOBUILD. Membership is free. There's other memberships that you can take advantage of that just get on the platform if you want to plug in and be connected to people who are having these kind of conversations that are really meant for your personal development and your growth. Another thing I want to share with you is Be Well Magazine is working with Dr. K to host a retreat in sunny San Diego in June. It's the Revival on the Water. You can currently reserve your spot for that retreat, take a vacation in beautiful San Diego, one of my favorite places. That's going to be happening June 23rd to the 25th. If you go to BeWellMagazines.com, click on the events tab, and then you'll see Revival on the Water. This is going to be a weekend at the Paradise Point Resort, a weekend designed for women to be able to just refocus, refuel, get their energy back, and really just kind of bond in a community with a number of women who are high impact women who really put a lot of time and effort into what they do to help others, who are really just kind of come in this retreat to unplug, recharge, do some bonding, and then get geared up for the second half of the year. So go to BeWellMagazines.com. Go ahead and hold your spot. If you can see these pictures on the screen, the place is absolutely beautiful. Cannot wait to get there and cannot wait to be part of that experience. All right. Anything in closing?
I would say one last thing. If you're available this Saturday, 9:15 Central Standard Time, I will be hosting a Love Yourself Self-Love workshop on Saturday in Bond to Build. If you're available, please join us. We have two amazing panelists that are going to share their experiences and what they've done to commit their or prioritize their self-love, and I'm super excited to converse with them and share their nuggets on the platform in Bond to Build. So make sure you tune in. If you can, go to imaniKray.com, and the link that is right there at the top will lead you to an opportunity to get signed up in Bond to Build and participate in that workshop. We would love to see you there.
One more thing.
Yep.
On tobuild.com is on Sunday hosting a 100K roadmap workshop. This is going to be free to anybody who's on Bond to Build to get access to it. And basically what we're going to do is provide you with a worksheet and do a webinar about how you can structure your business to be able to create a roadmap for it to produce 100K of revenue for you. The reason why we chose that 100K as a goal is because really they say that once you figure out how to generate $100,000 in revenue in your business, that sets the stage for exponential growth. Because at that point, all you really have to do is put things in place that allow you to scale and multiply. No longer are you trying to figure it out. It took me all 18 of the 20 years to get to that point because my mindset had to keep on catching up and developing, but once I got to that point and I see it, I'm like, now I understand why people say the hardest money that you're going to make is going to be that first 100K, because you're trying to figure out what are people want, what are people willing to pay for things. You're trying to figure it out. But after that, I look at everything now and I'm just like, okay, you can times 10 on that. You can times 10 on that, and just really just automatically put all that stuff in place. But first, you have to really have a roadmap and clarity to see how do you get to that first level. So that's going to be on bondtobuild.com this Sunday. Make sure you join so you can get access to it.
I love it. I love it.
Sweet baby Jesus. That's right. That's right. All right, y'all. Have a good one. Thank you for tuning in for Talk It Up Tuesday. I'm going to get you your clips.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm staying on.
How to get your clips. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, I'm staying on after this. I need the tea on how to get that, because we dropped too many nuggets during this conversation. I got to post it on social media.
Yeah, let's do it. We'll do a little training in here. You can get them right here in StreamYard. I'll show you how to do it.
All right.
All right, people. Have a good one. Thank you for tuning in. And comment down below if you're watching the replay. Let us know your thoughts. All right. Take care.